Hey everyone, it's Christina Richardson here, the Celiac Disease Dietitian. And today I'm going to be answering the question, if you've just been diagnosed with celiac disease, should your whole family or household go gluten-free with you? Well, the short answer is no, they probably shouldn't. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons why, as well as a practical plan for what to do instead. So, you've just been diagnosed with celiac disease and your lovely, amazing family are being really supportive. So supportive, in fact, that they're willing to go completely gluten-free along with you. But should they? Well, I did say the short answer is no, but really the answer is a much longer sort of. There's a few good reasons why they shouldn't cut gluten completely out of their diet, and I'm going to give you those right now. So the first reason is that gluten-containing grains like wheat, rye, oats and barley do make up an important part of a healthy diet. Wheat and oats especially, which are widely available and inexpensive, contain nutrients, specifically in their whole grain form, that most readily available gluten-free grains, for example rice and corn, just can't compete with. Protein and fibre are just 2 of those important nutrients. Wheat and oats are a lot higher in both protein and fibre than, say, rice or corn, which are the 2 grains that most gluten-free products are made from. Now, there are, of course, other gluten-free grains which are much better in terms of the nutrients they provide, but generally you won't find them in gluten-free breads and pastas and cereals because unfortunately those products are made with the cheapest available grain. They're rarely of the whole grain variety as well, okay? So it's very difficult to make sure that you're eating enough whole grain fibre on a gluten-free diet when you're relying on these, mainstream type gluten-free products. And you don't ever want to make this more difficult for yourself unless you have an important medical reason to do so, okay? So you can of course choose gluten-free food products that are better in terms of their nutrient profile, but generally you do pay a premium for these more specialized products. And that brings me to reason number 2. And that is that gluten-free products are usually very expensive. Unless you have an unlimited budget for groceries, switching everyone to 100% gluten-free is really going to hurt your back pocket and fast. And with the rising cost of living at the moment, you just don't want to do that unnecessarily. Okay, the third reason why you shouldn't switch everyone to a gluten-free diet is that if everyone in the family goes gluten-free, they lose the ability to be screened for celiac disease themselves. As you may know, if you follow me on social media or have been a client of mine, I do always recommend that close blood relatives should always be screened for celiac disease as soon as the first person in the family is diagnosed. But once you go gluten-free, you can't have those screening tests anymore. Or if you do, the results are going to be very unreliable because you need gluten in your diet for the celiac antibodies to show up. The fourth reason that I'm going to give you might be more of a controversial one, but one that many dietitians would agree with, and that is that if you cut something out of your diet for a long period of time and then start eating it again, there's a chance you may actually become less tolerant to it in that time. Okay? In other words, your digestive system may get a shock when you all of a sudden eat something that you haven't eaten in a long time. It's similar to what might happen if you never drink milk, then all of a sudden start having it again. And it might give you some malabsorption issues because the enzymes and bacteria in your gut haven't evolved to be able to deal with milk, or specifically the lactose in milk. So there are similar components of wheat called fructans, which also need special enzymes and bacteria to be absorbed and broken down. And if you don't continually feed those bacteria, guess what? They die. So that is a big reason why you shouldn't give up gluten unless you need to. The fifth and final reason why you shouldn't go gluten-free unless you need to is something I alluded to earlier, and that is generally the quality of a gluten-free diet tends to be poorer than a regular diet containing gluten because of the excess use of starchier, low-fibre grains. There is some research coming out that's telling us that people who go on a gluten-free diet are more likely to gain weight, and suffer from metabolic disease later in life. And it's thought to be due to the fact that most, and I emphasize most, gluten-free food products are not quite as healthy as regular ones. So this is why it's really important to make sure the people in your family who do have celiac disease are eating the right types of gluten-free foods and enough of the right types of gluten-free foods so they aren't at risk of these metabolic diseases like diabetes and cardiovascular disease later in life. And that's something I really support my clients to do in my program, Gluten Free Mastery, which, if you don't know about it, it's a program specifically for people newly diagnosed with celiac disease who want to make sure they're supporting their health and recovery. So you can find out more info about that in the link in the description. So now that I've given you the reasons why you probably don't want to change the whole family to a completely gluten-free diet, what do you do instead? Well, I'm going to tell you what I do with my family. So there's 2 celiacs in my family, myself and my daughter, but my husband and son aren't celiac, lucky boys. So the way I deal with a 50% gluten-free household is to make most family dinners 100% gluten-free. Okay, so that means all of our sauces, our condiments, mixes, and other pantry staples are gluten-free. That makes dinner time nice and easy and simple. Then for other meals, breakfast and lunch and snacks, the boys will just have their own cereal and their own bread, and sometimes their own muesli bars or things like that. Us girls will have our gluten-free Wheat Bix or muesli or eggs on gluten-free toast in the morning, and the boys will have their normal Wheat Bix, their oats or their wheat bread. Then at lunchtime, if we're having something like sandwiches or toasted sandwiches, us girls will always have our gluten-free sandwiches made first, which is a bonus. So made on fresh, clean chopping boards and clean knives, etc. So we also have our gluten-free labelled butter because lots of crumbs can get into that butter. Okay, so it's a good idea to always have your own. And then after our sandwiches are made, the boys can go to town making their own sandwiches with their own wheat bread and their own butter and make as much mess as they like. And then of course everything is washed up and wiped down. Sometimes with dinner, if we're having soup or burgers or wraps or things like that, the boys will have their own bread rolls or their own burger buns or wraps, just for the pure fact that it's a lot cheaper that way. With pizzas, we usually make our own base and that'll be a gluten-free one. If we're having a pasta dish, I don't muck around with 2 different types of pasta. That's just too much work and too much washing up. So pasta's generally always gluten-free. But if you have a bigger family and that gets a bit too expensive, that's always an option to separate them out. So really the only thing in our fridge or pantry that isn't gluten-free will be the boys' cereals, their bread, sometimes muesli bars, and of course their own butter. So any other snacks that we buy, like if we're having corn chips or bickies or chocolate or anything like that, they'll always be gluten-free ones as well because I just don't want my little daughter to feel like she's missing out on anything, but that's definitely just a personal choice, not a necessity. Okay, so that's a very easy way to run a half and half gluten-free and not gluten-free family or household. If you'd like more in-depth information on how to manage your gluten-free diet, I do welcome you to join my program, Gluten Free Mastery. Inside it, I teach you everything from how to educate your household, how to minimize cross-contamination at home and when eating out, and also, of course, like I mentioned, how you can make sure you're not missing out on any of the nutrients that you would otherwise be getting if you were able to eat wheat, rye, barley, and oats. I'll leave the link to learn more about my program below, like I said. And that's it for me today. If you have any questions about celiac disease or the gluten-free diet, you can send them to me on Facebook or Instagram, and be sure to follow me there as well for any updates. Oh, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.